Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The bullet shattered the tempered glass inches from my face, turning the panoramic view of the storm-lashed city into a spiderweb of fractures, and I knew, in that visceral, terrifying heartbeat, that gravity was the least of my worries. My fingers, raw and bleeding, slipped against the wet marble of the 45th floor balcony ledge as another gunshot echoed from the balcony below. I didn't think. I moved on instinct, a desperate animal cornered by a predator, and vaulted over the railing of the penthouse suite above, crashing onto the unfamiliar terrace in a heap of soaked denim and terror. I scrambled backward, chest heaving, waiting for the shooter, my ex, a man whose badge was just a license to hunt me, to climb up after me. But the night remained silent, save for the torrential rain and the distant wail of sirens. I was safe. Or so I thought until the floor-to-ceiling glass doors of the suite slid open with a soft, hydraulic hiss. I froze. The light from inside spilled out, illuminating the rain in golden streaks. A man stood in the threshold. He was tall, an imposing silhouette cut from darkness, wearing a charcoal dress shirt unbuttoned at the collar, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms corded with muscle and ink. He held a crystal tumbler of amber liquid in one hand, his posture relaxed, almost bored. But it was his eyes, cold, predatory pools of mercury, that pinned me to the wet stone. He didn't scream. He didn't call security. He took a sip of his drink, looked at the jagged bullet hole in the glass railing below, and then looked back at me, a shivering, soaking wet intruder. Most people use the elevator, he said, his voice a deep baritone that vibrated through the floorboards. But I suppose the view is better from the ledge. My name is Caspian, and 5 minutes ago, I was a librarian running from a domestic nightmare. Now, I was staring down Dante Valle, the man who owned the city's underworld, in the middle of his private sanctuary. Please, I choked out, my voice cracking. Don't call the police. Anyone but the police. Dante tilted his head, a faint, cruel smile playing on his lips. The police? In my hotel? You really are lost, little bird. He stepped back, gesturing for me to enter. It wasn't an invitation, it was a command. And God help me, I crawled toward it. The interior of the penthouse was a study in lethal opulence. Black marble floors, velvet furniture the color of dried blood, and art on the walls that cost more than my entire life's earnings. But the most arresting feature was the man now closing the heavy glass doors, shutting out the storm, and the man hunting me. I dripped rainwater onto his pristine floor, hugging myself to stop the tremors. I just need to hide. For an hour. Then I'll go. Dante ignored me. He walked over to a bar cart, poured a second glass of whiskey, and set it down on a low coffee table. He sat on the leather sofa, crossing one leg over the other, watching me with the detached curiosity of a scientist observing a specimen. Who is chasing you, he asked. Not why are you here, but who is chasing you? He was a man who understood the geometry of pursuit. Riker, I whispered. Detective Riker. Dante's brows rose a fraction. The Vice Squad bulldog. He has a nasty reputation. And what did a soaking wet stray like you do to offend the police department's favorite attack dog? I left him, I said, the shame burning hotter than the cold. He didn't like that. Dante hummed, a low sound in his throat. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, the crystal glass dangling loosely from his fingers. So, you broke into the most secure suite in the Northern District, scaling 3 floors of rain-slicked concrete, to escape a lover's quarrel? It wasn't a quarrel, I snapped, a sudden flash of anger cutting through the fear. I pulled down the collar of my soaked shirt, revealing the mottled purple and yellow bruising around my neck. It was an execution I walked out on. The air in the room shifted. Instantly. The temperature didn't drop, but the pressure increased. Dante's gaze fixed on the bruises. The amusement vanished, replaced by something sharper, colder. He wasn't looking at me with pity. He was assessing the damage like an appraiser looking at a scratched diamond. Come here, he ordered. I hesitated. I said, come here. I walked toward him, my sneakers squeaking on the marble. When I was within arm's reach, he set his drink down and reached out. I flinched, bracing for a blow. Dante froze. His hand hovered in the air, then slowly, deliberately, He took my chin between his thumb and forefinger. His skin was rough, calloused, but his touch was surprisingly gentle. He tilted my head back, examining the marks Riker had left. Sloppy work, Dante murmured. He lacks discipline. He has a gun. I countered, my heart hammering against my ribs. So do I, Dante said softly. I have thousands of them. He let go of my chin and leaned back into the sofa, his eyes scanning my face. You have a choice, Stray. You can go back out that door, take the elevator down to the lobby, and take your chances with the detective. I'm sure he's checking the perimeter right now. I swallowed hard. Or, Dante said, his eyes gleaming with a dark proposition, you stay. Riker has no jurisdiction here. The police do not enter the Opal Tower without my permission, and I rarely give it. You will be safe. What's the catch? I asked. I knew how the world worked. Men like Dante Valle didn't run charities for battered ex-boyfriends. You broke into my home, Dante said, his voice dropping an octave. You disturbed my evening. You tracked mud on my Italian marble. Everything has a cost, Caspian. You want my protection? You become mine. The word hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Mine. Yours. I repeated. My guest. My shadow. My entertainment, Dante said, his gaze raking over me. I am bored, Caspian. My life is a cycle of meetings, violence, and negotiations. You are something unexpected. You possess a survival instinct that intrigues me. Stay. Amuse me. And Riker will never touch you again. It was a deal with the devil. I knew that. But as I looked at the dark expanse of the window, imagining Riker out there in the rain, racking the slide of his service pistol, the devil in the bespoke suit seemed like the lesser evil. Okay, I whispered. Dante smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Good. Take off your clothes. I gasped, clutching my shirt. What? You're wet. You're shivering, and you smell like a wet dog, Dante said, standing up and walking toward a hallway. The shower is to the left. There is a robe. Burn those rags you're wearing. We have standards here. The first week was a blur of high thread count sheets and silent terror. I expected Dante to be a monster. I expected him to demand payment in flesh immediately. But he didn't. He was a ghost in his own home. I would wake up and breakfast would be waiting. Exquisite, expensive food that I ate alone at the long mahogany table. I would spend my days wandering the library, reading books I'd only ever seen in catalogs. Dante would return late in the evening, smelling of cigar smoke and gunpowder. He would sit, pour his whiskey, and watch me. Sometimes he would make me read to him. Sometimes he would ask me questions about my life, dissecting my trauma with clinical precision. He was peeling me apart, layer by layer, looking for the core of who I was. Why did you stay with him? Dante asked one night. We were on the balcony, me in a silk robe he had provided, him in his eternal suit. I thought I could fix him, I admitted, staring at the city lights. Arrogance, Dante scoffed. You cannot fix a broken thing by breaking yourself to fit into its cracks. And you? I turned to him. Are you broken? Dante looked at me, his eyes reflecting the neon glow of the city. I am not broken, Caspian. I am the hammer. The dynamic shifted imperceptibly. I wasn't just a prisoner. I was becoming a fixture. I started pouring his drink before he asked. I learned to distinguish the difference between his annoyed silence and his thinking silence. And he began to touch. It started small. A hand on the small of my back as he guided me through a room. A thumb brushing a crumb from my lip. The way he would stand just a little too close, boxing me in against a table or a wall, asserting his dominance without saying a word. It was intoxicating. It was terrifying. My body, starved of affection and conditioned to expect pain, began to crave the heavy weight of his gaze. But the world outside hadn't forgotten me. It was 3 weeks later when the security feed on the massive screen in the living room flared red. I was reading on the sofa. Dante was reviewing contracts at his desk. Sir, the voice of his head of security crackled over the intercom. We have a situation in the lobby. A police officer. He's demanding to see the guest logs. He claims he has a warrant. I dropped the book. The blood drained from my face. Riker. Dante didn't look up from his papers. Tell him the Opal Tower is a private residence. No warrant is valid without a judge from the High Court, and I own 3 of them. He's insistent, sir. He's making a scene. He says he knows the fugitive is here. Dante finally looked up. He looked at me. I was trembling, the phantom sensation of hands around my throat choking me. Let him up, Dante said calm. No, I screamed, scrambling off the sofa. No, Dante, please. He'll kill me. He'll. Dante stood up. He moved with that blurring speed, crossing the room and grabbing my wrists. He pulled me close, his chest hard against mine. Do you trust me? He asked. He's crazy, I sobbed. You don't know him. And you don't know me, Dante whispered, his lips brushing my ear. Compose yourself, Caspian. Stand behind me. And do not speak. The elevator chimed 2 minutes later. The door slid open, and Riker stormed in. He looked worse than I remembered. Eyes bloodshot, hair disheveled, rain dripping from his trench coat. His hand was hovering near his holster. Caspian. Riker roared, his eyes locking onto me instantly. Get your ass over here. I flinched, instinctively stepping back, but Dante didn't move. He stood like a monolith between us, one hand casually in his pocket, the other holding his drink. Detective, Dante said, his voice smooth as velvet. You are dripping on my floor. Again. I am beginning to think you people have no manners. Riker sneered, pulling his badge out. I'm here for the boy, Valle. This is official police business. He's a suspect in a robbery. A robbery? Dante raised an eyebrow. What did he steal? Your ego. Don't play games with me, mobster. Riker spat, stepping forward. He's coming with me. Now. Move, or I'll book you for obstruction. Dante laughed. It was a dark, dry sound. You seem to be under a misconception, detective. You think you are the law? But in this room, I am the gravity. Riker drew his gun. It happened so fast. Riker leveled the weapon at Dante's chest. Step aside, I screamed, don't hurt him. But Dante didn't flinch. He didn't even blink. He just stared at Riker, his eyes boring into the man's soul. You point a weapon at me in my own home? That is a declaration of war, Riker. I'm taking what's mine, Riker snarled. Yours, Dante repeated. His voice dropped, losing all veneer of civility. It became the voice of the alpha, the voice of the monster in the dark. He was never yours. You broke him. You discarded him. And now, he is under my protection. Dante snapped his fingers. From the shadows of the hallway, 3 red laser dots appeared on Riker's chest. Riker froze. He looked down at the dots dancing over his heart, then back up at the mezzanine where Dante's guards had silently materialized with suppressed rifles. Put the gun down, Dante said, or they will paint the walls with you. Riker's hand shook. The realization of where he was, and who he was threatening, finally pierced his mania. He slowly lowered the gun. You can't keep him forever, Riker hissed. He's weak. He needs to be controlled. Dante took a step forward, closing the distance. He towered over the detective. He is not weak. He survived you. And as for control, Dante turned his head slightly, his eyes locking with mine. He submits only to those who are worthy. Dante turned back to Riker, his expression devoid of mercy. Leave. If I see you near this building, or near him again, I will not send lawyers. I will send a cleanup crew. Do you understand? Riker looked at me one last time, a look of pure hatred, before holstering his weapon. This isn't over. It is, Dante said. Get out. Riker retreated to the elevator. The doors closed, severing the link to my past. The silence that followed was deafening. My legs gave out, and I sank to the floor, burying my face in my hands. I felt a presence before I felt the touch. Dante knelt before me. He didn't offer empty platitudes. He reached out and took my hands, pulling them away from my face. Look at me, he commanded. I looked up through my tears. He looked fierce, terrifying, and utterly beautiful. He is gone, Dante said. He is nothing. You are safe. Why? I asked, my voice trembling. Why did you do that? Because, Dante said, wiping a tear from my cheek with his thumb. I protect what belongs to me. He leaned in, and for the first time, he kissed me. It wasn't gentle. It was possessive, demanding, and tasting of whiskey and danger. It was a seal on a contract I had signed the moment I climbed onto his balcony. I wrapped my arms around his neck, pulling him closer, surrendering to the abyss. I had broken into the lion's den to escape a wolf, only to realize that the lion didn't want to eat me. He wanted to keep me. And that is how the viper tamed the wolf. If you enjoyed seeing Dante take control, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you trade your freedom for safety with a man like Dante? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then, prompt image. Prompt. Masterpiece, best quality, high-res, 1.2. Korean manhwa style, semi-realistic, digital art, 2 men, BL, Yaoi, man 1. Dante Valle, standing tall, sharp jawline, cold gray eyes, slicked back black hair, wearing charcoal suit with dress shirt unbuttoned, holding a crystal whiskey glass, dominant stance, looking down. Man 2. Caspian, kneeling on the floor, messy brown hair, wearing an oversized silk robe, looking up with teary eyes and expression of submission and awe, clutching the fabric of man 1's trousers. Background is a dark luxury penthouse suite, floor-to-ceiling windows with rain and city lights, dramatic shadows, cinematic lighting, intense atmosphere, detailed textures.